On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be taking a look at the featherweight fight as part of UFC 300 between Aljamain Sterling and Calvin Kattar. And if you've never watched a show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles. Then I'm going to give you my prediction at the end. Some of this stuff may have relevance to you. It may not. But that's for you to decide in the comments when I want to hear your own prediction once I'm done this video. Again, this is part of the stacked 300 card. Pretty much every fight on here could be a main event. And at the time right now, it does appear like this fight is going to be on the main card. Mind you, they have 6 fights listed here. So we'll see if this does end up there. Either way, we know this is only 3 rounds as opposed to 5, but this really could easily be a 5-round fight. Of course, Sterling, the former bantamweight champion, fighting at featherweight for the first time in his UFC career. So you can see there, quick tail of the tape. Calvin Kattar 23-7, Aljamain Sterling 23-4, 36-34, 5'11" to 5'7", 72-71. So Kattar going to be a little bit bigger, not by much though, just 1 inch reach advantage, 5'11", a little bit taller, and about 2 years older, almost 2 years older in this fight. But we're actually going to start first with the former bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling, who, like I said, going to be moving up. And at the time we're recording this, the bantamweight title going to be defended tomorrow night between Sean O'Malley taking on Chito Vera. But let's talk about Sterling here. I mentioned it there, 23-4. He's 34 years old. He is 5'7" with a 71-inch reach, so he's only 2 years younger than Calvin Kattar. Other than that, doesn't have any advantages in this fight. He was the former bantamweight champion. Like I mentioned, he had 2 title defenses. He's a BJJ black belt, and he trains at both Cerro Longo and the odd time will train out in Vegas at Syndicate or at the PI. So he gets a bunch of different training out there. He's got performance of the night 1 time against Corey Sandhagen. He's tied with TJ Dillashaw for most wins in UFC bantamweight division history at 13. He's also had the longest winning streak in bantamweight division history at 9, but that obviously got halted when he got knocked out by Sean O'Malley, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Aljamain Sterling had his amateur debut way back in 2009, I should say. It was May of 2009, I should say. That's where the 5 threw me off. Made his MMA debut in April of 2011 and his UFC debut in February of 2014. Sterling is 15-4. Sorry, 15-3. No, 15-4. Sorry, my math's never. This is why I'm doing this instead of being a mathematician, because I can't add and subtract apparently. So he's 15-4. He's got 7 stoppage victories. Some notable wins for Aljamain Sterling in his UFC career include Renan Barão, although Barão a bit on the decline when he fought Barão at that time. Where was that fight? UFC 214. But still, former champion, got to put that on the resume. Brett Johns was undefeated at the time when he beat him. That was a big win. I know Johns, I don't think was ever ranked in the bantamweight division, but still have to mention it. Cody Stamann at the time was 12-1 when he fought him. That was a good win. Jimmy Rivera was a ranked opponent at the time, got a win over him, and then got wins over Pedro Munoz. Corey Sandhagen still his best win. The only guy to finish Sandhagen in the UFC at the time of recording this. Very, very, very good. And then has 2 wins over Piotr Jan. Obviously, there's some controversy, probably with both of them, but more so the first fight there. And then his losses include Brian Caraway, which is a split. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Rafael Sunsao, which is a split, and then got finished by Marlon Moraes as well. Also lost to Sean O'Malley, where he dropped his bantamweight title. Sterling's had a few layoffs in his career, going from Caraway to a Sunsao. There's a 244-day layoff going from Munoz to Sandhagen. There was a 364-day layoff going from Sandhagen to Jan. There was a 273-day layoff going from Jan to the other Jan fight, the rematch, 399 days. And then going into this fight, he last fought O'Malley in August, so not a huge layoff going into this one, with this fight being in April. One thing, I talked about the layoff. How about a short notice fight? Well, not short notice, but a lot of people talk about the fact that he didn't have a lot of time in between the Henry Cejudo fight and the Sean O'Malley fight. Well, again, did some math here. Going from May to August, there was only a 105 days in between the Cejudo and O'Malley fights. So did that have an effect on his weight cut? I don't know. Obviously, he does cut a lot of weight, and that's why he's up at featherweight in this fight. Okay, let's talk about some close fights that Sterling's had. I mentioned the Caraway fight. If you go back and look at the media scorecards for that on MMA Decisions, 11 media members scored the fight for Caraway, 13 scored it a draw, and only 1 media member scored it for Sterling. So, again, probably deserved to lose that one. Rafael Sunsao is a different story. UFC and Fox 23. Actually, it's not a different story. Never mind. Got my numbers mixed up there, too. Sunsao, 14 media members scored the fight for a Sunsao, 1 scoring it a draw, and 3 scoring it for Sterling. So that's another one that probably deserved to lose. We just like to mention these, in terms of context. And then the Cejudo fight, again, some people felt like Cejudo edged that one out. It was a split decision win for Sterling. 21 media members scored the fight for Sterling, 2 scoring it for Cejudo. So there you go. I don't think the verdict's really there. Let's look at some stats for Aljamain Sterling here. Significant strikes landed per minute, 4.73. His striking accuracy is at 52%. Striking defense is at 58%, which is actually good. A lot of fighters are, sort of hovering around that 50% number. Takedown average is 1.97. We'll see if he uses any in this fight. His takedown accuracy is only at 24%, but his takedown defense is at 45. We'll see if Calvin throws a takedown or two in this one. But yeah, very interesting matchup here as Sterling looks to find a new home in the featherweight division. But let's talk about his opponent now, Calvin Kattar, one of the heads of the New England cartel. He's probably like the Chris Maltasanti of the New England cartel, I guess, right? He's one of the head guys there. Actually, maybe, no, yeah, I guess Tyson Chartier would be Tony Soprano, and Calvin Kattar would be like Maltasanti or Sill or Paulie Walnuts, maybe. I don't know. But either way, Calvin Kattar, you can see there, 23-7 record. He's got 11 knockouts, 2 submissions, and 10 decisions. He's a number 8th ranked featherweight. He's 35 years old, 5'11" with a 72-inch reach. So he's got a 4-inch height and 1-inch reach advantage. Sterling's younger, though. Got to mention that. He's a BJJ blue belt. He's never been finished through 29 career fights, and he's got fight of the night 5 times. Well, actually, sorry. He has been finished. That was an injury, though. He's never been like cleanly finished. His last fight was an injury, so do have to mention that. Kattar's got fight of the night 5 times against Shane Burgos, has beat Magomed Sharapov, Max Holloway, and Giga Chikadze, and Josh Emmett. Kattar did not have an amateur debut, went straight to the pros in July of 2007. So he's had more pro, despite the fact, I mean, he is 2 years older. Sterling has more UFC fights, I think, but it's actually Kattar who started his professional MMA career a little bit earlier, right? Because Sterling started his in, where was it here? 2011. So Kattar started his in 2007, which is interesting. So one thing to keep in mind there. Made his UFC debut in July of 2017, which was well after Sterling got in there, because Sterling's debut was in February of 2014. So Sterling had been in the UFC a couple of years before Kattar made his debut, which was against Andre Fili, fight that he actually won. I remember that fight. That was pretty cool. Kattar is 7-5 in the UFC. He's got 4 stoppage wins. Some notable wins include Andre Fili, Shane Burgos, Jeremy Stevens, Danny Ige, and Giga Chikadze. Some losses include Renato Moicano, beat Magomed Sharapov, Max Holloway, Josh Emmett, and Arnold Allen. Got to talk about his last fight. Again, it was a weird one. I put that in the same category as like Brian Ortega and Yair Rodriguez, Jan Blachowicz and Alexander Rakic. Like, it wasn't a decisive win. Like, was Arnold having a lot of success early in that fight? Yes, he was, but Kattar blew out his knee. It happens. We could even, maybe a better example would be Fiziev and Gamrot. That was another one where there was a bit of a premature injury there. So can't take too much away from that last fight. And the Josh Emmett fight was very close. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. The one thing with Kattar that's really slowed him down, and I think has sort of become an afterthought in the featherweight division, and I don't mean that in a bad way, I just mean that people kind of forget about him, is because he hasn't fought that much. So obviously had a really, really brutal loss to Max Holloway. It was a decision, but that was a fight that I think a lot of people felt like his coaches could have thrown in the towel. So going from Holloway to Chikadze, there was a 364-day layoff. Going from going from Chikadze. So yeah, sorry, had the Holloway layoff, fights Chikadze, and then fights 3 times in 2022. But he hasn't fought since October of 2022. So he had 3 fights that year, but he hasn't fought in a while. So there'll be a 532-day layoff going into this fight. That's huge. I mean, unless you're Dominic Cruz, that's really a disadvantage, I would think, being off for that long. It's the longest of his career as far as UFC career. I know he's had some layoffs earlier on in his actual pro career, but it's the longest UFC layoff he's had. And like I said, he missed pretty much the most of 2021. You can see there, after the Holloway fight, needed to take a lot of time off, so didn't fight for almost a year. And then has only fought 3 times in 2022, didn't fight at all last year, and then also didn't fight in 2023 either. So again, that's something to keep in mind. Let's talk about the Josh Emmett fight. Some people felt like that should have gone the other way. Some people even call it a robbery. If you go look at the media scorecards for that one at UFC Austin in June of 2022, 4 media members scored the fight for Josh Emmett, 14 scored it for Calvin Kattar. So again, majority felt like Kattar should have won that. He wins that fight. We might be talking about a different career path for him going forward, but nonetheless, Kattar is coming into this fight off back-to-back losses for the first time in his UFC career. Let's look at Calvin Kattar's stats here a little bit. 5.112 as far as strikes landed per minute. So that's higher than Sterling. So that's encouraging. Striking accuracy to only 39%. That's kind of low. Striking defense is at 54%, so a little bit lower than Sterling, so he does get hit a little bit more. But to be fair, Kattar typically has more stand-up fights than his opponent does, so that's probably more likely. Takedown average 0.42, not very good. His takedown accuracy is at 29%. Takedown defense is at 91%. That's where things could get interesting. Sterling is a good wrestler. Will he be able to take down Calvin Kattar? We know Kattar had a good game plan when it came to wrestling with Chikadze, right? So we'll see if that happens in this fight. We'll sort of see what happens. This is what's really interesting to me. Here's the odds, okay? So right now, it's almost a pick 'em, which I get. I mean, I totally understand that. You look here, Sterling on some books is a slight underdog. On other books, you have Kattar as a slight favorite, or Sterling being a slight favorite as well. That's where we're here. But check out Tapology. This is where things are interesting. Again, this is just fan voting. So this isn't, no one's putting any money on this. 73% of people are picking Sterling over Calvin Kattar. So it's interesting here. Now, I've been going back and forth on this one, and I'm going to let the anticipation build here for about 3 seconds, and then I'm going to tell you who I'm picking. I'm actually going with Aljamain Sterling here. Now, look, this goes against one of the rules I use in a lot of cases when it comes to picking fighters moving up a weight class. Usually I pick the fighter that's in that weight class, the mainstay. So the mainstay in this weight class is Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar's never fought at 35. In fact, he's fought at lightweight before, so he is a pretty, decently sized guy for the weight class. And Sterling's going to be the one moving up. But there's a couple reasons why I like Sterling in this fight, and we'll get into those things right now. Because again, in most cases, I'm taking the guy that's in the weight class. Okay, so a couple things. Number one, the reason I think this fight will go the distance as opposed to a finish is because Kattar realistically has never been finished other than that injury. Again, that was a weird one. I don't really count that as like someone being able to stop him in the fight. I look at that as, it was an injury. Max Holloway, I think you could have made an argument that they could have stopped that fight. If you wanted to talk about that, I have more time for that than the Arnold Allen as being like a legit stoppage. So again, I think it'll be tough for Sterling to finish this fight. And with the fact that it's 3 rounds, I don't see that happening. Kattar likely won't knock out Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling, I think you can make a case that part of the reason Sean O'Malley was able to knock him out in his last fight was the fact that he didn't have that much time to cut weight. He only had 105 days in between fights. We know that he gets big in between fights. I think he's kind of better suited for featherweight, honestly, at this stage in his career. We know as you get older, and Sterling's 34 right now, it's typically harder to cut weight. So I do think the weight cut played a role in him losing to O'Malley. Would have O'Malley still have won? Yeah, I think there's a very good possibility that O'Malley still would have won that fight. But that is one thing to consider, that this isn't a case of someone being really undersized in this fight. And he's not really, right? Other than Kattar being a little bit taller, they have the same reach. And, Sterling's a pretty strong guy. Like, you see him, he's pretty built. I don't think it'll be like a huge size discrepancy in this fight. So if we're throwing that out the window, we got to kind of break it down to accolades. And look, Kattar, he's been on a good run prior to all these setbacks like Holloway. And, again, we saw Kattar get that sort of, contender fight against Holloway, and he didn't pass at all. In fact, he got completely dominated in that fight. So I think there's a question, is Kattar a title challenger? I don't know. We don't know that about Sterling either. We know Sterling has success at 35. He's got some good wins there. He's had a bit of a weird run at 35, right? The Jan fight, which ended in a DQ. I mean, that should have been a no contest. I've said this time and time again. They would have saved everyone a lot of grief if they just would have called the Jan fight a no contest for the illegal knee instead of giving it as a win to Sterling. It's not really a win. In fact, the tide was turning in that fight. Jan was probably going to win that. The rematch, I thought Sterling won. A lot of people don't like Sterling, so they get blinded to the fact that he won that fight. It was close. I thought Sterling won that. The Dillashaw fight, we can completely scratch off the resume because Dillashaw was injured. Any bantamweight probably would have beat Dillashaw in that situation because he was injured going in. And then you got to give him credit for the Cejudo win. Like, that was good, right? Cejudo has knockout power. He was able to survive that. He edges out a decision, but majority of people felt like he won that. So again, Sterling has fought some pretty good guys. It's been in a different weight class, right? So there's that. 48% of Sterling's wins are by decision, only 35 by submission. Kattar's never been submitted, so I think it's unlikely that Sterling submits him. And like I said, Sterling typically wins decisions, so that sort of leads more to him winning a decision here. The other thing is Kattar's taken a lot of damage. He's had a lot of injuries. So we're not getting the Calvin Kattar that was going into the Max Holloway fight. We're getting the Calvin Kattar who's had 3 fights since 2022, and a Kattar that's coming in off a long layoff, a Kattar that's a little bit older, and a Kattar that's taken a lot of damage. Sterling, say what you want about him, he hasn't really taken that much damage, right? He's had a few injuries. He had the knockout loss to Moraes, had the knockout loss to O'Malley, right? Which was, more than enough time off, I think. But overall, he's not getting in wars. Like even the Jeremy Stevens fight, go look at Kattar's face after that. He took some damage in that fight. Sterling, you don't see that too much. Maybe the Pedro Munoz fight, he took a bit of damage there, but overall, he hasn't taken a lot of that as well. And like I said, I think the biggest thing for me here is that Sterling's not going to be really undersized in this fight. So it's not like a Jan Blachowicz fighting Adesanya. To me, they're pretty close in weight and all that. So I just feel better picking Sterling. This does go against my rule where usually I pick the fighter that's been the mainstay in the weight class. But just what type of Kattar are we going to get? I think there's too many question marks here. Like I said, long layoff, taking a lot of damage. Sterling a little bit fresher. And again, like I think Sterling has proven that he can be a champion. I don't see any reason why he can't try and find that same success at 45. So I'm going to be going Aljamain Sterling by decision to get it done. I would be pretty surprised if we saw it finished here. I also wouldn't be surprised if Kattar could pull this off too. Like you never know. Maybe all this time off has actually helped him out. I think the fight goes the distance is worth a stab here if we're looking at a prop just in case. But yeah, I'm going Aljamain Sterling decision. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who are you picking and why? I would like to know that. I just want a prediction here. That's all I'm asking for. Again, don't think Kattar can't win this fight, but I think there's more to like about Sterling here as far as what he brings to the table here. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. At Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. This is Early Look. If there's any other matchups that are coming up that you want me to preview, let me know in the comments. Would love to hear from you. If not, I'll see you later. Take care. Bye.